My mother-in-law was having a brain hemorrhage, but my wife, a doctor, had abandoned her shift, obsessed with winning back an old flame before he left the country. I called her, but she sent me straight to voicemail. I begged her resident for help, only to be met with a sneer. Sorry, no beds available. We can't admit her. As I watched my mother-in-law's consciousness fade, I wasn't the least bit panicked. In my first life, I had pleaded with everyone, finally managed to get a hold of Chloe, and drag her back from the airport. Her mother was saved, but Leo, the one that got away, was gone forever. Chloe locked herself in her room for 3 days. When she emerged, she acted as if nothing had happened, only to completely unravel on Leo's birthday. My mother was fine that day. If it weren't for you, Leo never would have left me. She stabbed me to death. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day of my mother-in-law's stroke. This time, I wasn't calling her back. The ICU is full. We can't take her. How many times do I have to tell you? At the entrance to the ER, Chloe's loyal resident, Megan, stood with her arms spread, blocking my path like a human barricade. Megan had always been the #1 fan of Chloe and Leo. She saw me as the enemy, the homewrecker who kept the star-crossed lovers apart. She never had a kind word for me. In fact, she seemed to make it her personal mission to humiliate me. At my wedding to Chloe, when the officiant asked if anyone objected, it was Megan who stood up. She demanded to know why I would knowingly destroy a beautiful relationship, why I was so pathetic, clinging to a woman who clearly didn't love me. Then, she turned to Chloe and asked if she would leave with Leo if he walked through the doors right then. You could have heard a pin drop in that hall. Everyone heard Chloe's clear, unwavering yes. A wedding should be the happiest day of a person's life. Mine was a complete circus. From that moment on, every look from Chloe's friends and family was laced with contempt. With Chloe's silent approval, Megan's bullying only intensified. She was like a loyal dog, barking furiously at my every move. Preventing me from seeing Chloe at the hospital was just one of her basic duties. This time, however, I was actually here because my mother-in-law was having a medical emergency. But Megan saw it as just another one of my pathetic ploys, and she stood like a brick wall, refusing to let me pass. I looked at her devotion, the way she guarded the entrance like it was Fort Knox, and I let out a soft chuckle. Without another word, I turned and walked away. The second I got the car door open, I put on a performance, my face crumpling as if I were about to break down. Mom, it's all my fault. I'm so useless. I can't reach Chloe, and Megan won't listen to me. I can't get you treated right away. Mom, you have to hang on. I'll go wait in the ER line for you. Hearing this, my mother-in-law gasped, her breath catching in her throat, and she passed out cold. Get this car out of here. You're blocking the ambulance bay. Megan's sharp voice preceded her. She strode over, but the words died in her throat when she saw my mother-in-law, pale and unconscious, in the passenger seat. It didn't take long for her to recover, her expression twisting into one of pure disdain. You're a real piece of work, you know that? Manipulating your mother-in-law into helping you with this little drama. She raised her voice, addressing my unconscious mother-in-law directly. Ma'am, Ethan doesn't deserve you. Why do you let him use you like this? When she got no response, Megan turned her fire back on me. Shamelessness really is a superpower. No wonder Chloe ended up stuck with you. You got an endless supply of dirty tricks. I used to swallow her insults, try not to give Chloe another reason to hate me. But not today. Today, I wasn't taking it anymore. I straightened my shoulders, stepped toward her, and said coldly, "Who's the bitch calling a bitch?" Megan took an involuntary step back, realizing I'd rattled her. A flash of humiliation crossed her face before she shot back at the top of her lungs. "The bitch is calling you a bitch." Her shrill voice drew the attention of several onlookers, who covered their mouths to hide their smirks. I just smiled without a word. The realization of the trap she'd just fallen in had dawned on her. I watched as her face went crimson with rage, her eyebrows practically flying off her forehead. She launched into a machine gun tirade of insults. I just stood there, watching her pathetic clown show, and I suddenly remembered myself in the last life, panicked, red-faced, and desperate. Back then, when I had begged for help, Megan had stonewalled me just like this. My mother-in-law's condition was critical, but I couldn't get through to Chloe on the phone. The moment I'd arrived at the hospital, Megan had intercepted me, as if she'd been lying in wait. I couldn't understand why she would block me when a life was on the line. To save my mother-in-law, I pleaded, begged, and nearly went insane, my throat raw from explaining, but she just stood there, calm and collected, refusing to let me find Chloe. Finally, probably because I looked so utterly pathetic, Megan had pulled out her phone and started a video call with Chloe, wanting her to see my humiliating state. The second the call connected, I snatched the phone and aimed the camera at my mother-in-law. Only then did Chloe and Megan finally believe me. They rushed her into surgery. Chloe never showed up in person, but as one of the hospital's top surgeons, she pulled strings, marshaled resources, and made sure her mother received the best care. Much later, she returned from wherever she'd been, walked straight into the operating room without a single glance at me. After what felt like an eternity, the light above the door finally went out. My mother-in-law had been saved. I found out later that her life was saved at the cost of Chloe's future with Leo. It became a thorn that lodged itself deep in Chloe's heart. Thinking of it now, my eyes darkened. It felt like 1,000 hands were tearing at my chest, trying to rip an opening for the scalding hatred to pour out. Seeing that I wasn't fighting back, Megan thought she'd won. She tilted her head back, looking down her nose at me. I couldn't help but sneer at her smug expression. You really are a good little dog. What kind of treat does Chloe give you to make you so loyal? Her eyes went wide with fury. Forgetting all about the onlookers, she exploded. Ethan, you should take a look in the mirror before you talk about anyone else. You're a homewrecker. Isn't it enough that you torture Dr. Vance every day? Now you're making her mother fake an illness just to get attention? You have no shame. The crowd of onlookers grew, which was exactly what Megan wanted. She scanned the faces around us, her voice dripping with sincerity as she took the moral high ground. Look at all these other patients. Every single person here has more important things to deal with than you. You know how skilled Dr. Vance is, how many people are waiting to see her. But you selfishly demand her time. It's like you think these other patients' lives don't matter. In a few short sentences, she had painted me as a monster. The uninformed crowd murmured in agreement, joining her chorus of condemnation. You look like a decent guy, but you're rotten to the core. Why don't you just get lost? The world doesn't revolve around you. Yeah, get the hell out of here before I make you. Public opinion had turned completely against me. Megan shot me a victorious, condescending look and theatrically urged me to leave. I looked at the circle of self-righteous faces, a pack of wolves closing in. I felt nothing but contempt, but on the outside, I gave them the weakness they wanted to see. I nodded slowly and announced in a clear voice, "Fine, we won't get treated here." My quick surrender seemed to catch Megan off guard, and should have. The old Ethan would have fought tooth and nail to get his mother-in-law into that hospital. But this was a new life, and I wouldn't be making the same mistakes. In my past life, after Chloe rushed back and saved her mother, she vanished for days. No one could find her or get in touch with her. Megan, who knew the whole story, blamed me for not taking better care of my mother-in-law, for forcing Chloe to give up Leo at such a critical moment. She even viciously suggested that I had deliberately done something to trigger the stroke. I was cornered with no way to defend myself, so I gritted my teeth and silently took care of my mother-in-law. The truth is, I had always been invisible in that family. I was completely alone against the ridicule led by Megan. By then, I was already thinking about giving up. No matter how deep my youthful crush on Chloe had been, it had been eroded to nothing by years of emotional neglect. Just as I had finally decided to cut ties with this toxic relationship, Chloe reappeared. She was immaculate, her makeup perfect, looking no different than usual. The only change was her attitude toward me. She no longer treated me like I was invisible. She sincerely thanked me for saving her mother's life. After that, it was as if she'd suddenly discovered my good qualities. She started asking about my day, bringing me snacks, and a look in her eyes held the warmth of a melting glacier. Her transformation stunned Megan, who asked if she was finally over Leo for good. Chloe didn't say a word, but her actions spoke for her. For the next 6 months, she never mentioned his name again. Her body and soul returned to our little family. I was moved to tears, believing I had finally made it through the storm. But just when I was at my happiest, Chloe delivered the fatal blow. On a perfectly ordinary day, she stabbed me in the back. Before I could even process it, she plunged the knife into my chest. My eyes widened in disbelief as pain seared through me. As I opened my mouth to scream, she covered it with her hand. Her touch was gentle, as if holding a lover, but her words were a demonic whisper in my ear. Do you know what today is? It's Leo's birthday. If it weren't for that little scene you orchestrated 6 months ago, I would be with him right now. Her voice, usually deep and soothing, was now laced with a bone-chilling cold. Ignoring my dying struggles, she recounted all her beautiful memories with Leo. I could feel my life draining away. I tried to fight to call for help, but all it took was a slow, deliberate twist of the knife in my chest to subdue me. Chloe was a doctor. She knew exactly how to control life and death. Her hatred for me was so profound that she wouldn't grant me a quick end. She wanted me to feel the abyss of despair, body, and soul. The moment my soul broke free from my body, Chloe finished her love story. I floated in the air and watched as she calmly disfigured my face and dismembered my body. She didn't even hide it from her mother. When my mother-in-law appeared, Chloe simply told her to go back to her room and not to look. I thought my mother-in-law, witnessing such an inhuman act, would have some basic moral decency. I thought after all these years, after I'd saved her life, she would try to stop the torture. But she just stood there silently for a moment, and then joined in. She told Chloe she would keep her secret, that she wouldn't let her go to prison. I watched her, her face a web of wrinkles, her movements shockingly efficient. Darkness crashed down on me like a landslide, burying me without mercy. I felt the chill of every cut, heard the silent scream of every severed tissue. I was reborn with an infinite hatred, swearing that in this life, the wicked would reap what they sowed. I closed my eyes, forcing my racing heart to slow. The angry shouts around me hadn't subsided. I gave Megan one last, cold look, then turned and got in my car. My mother-in-law was still unconscious. I started the engine, my face a blank mask. Just then, an elderly man in a white coat stopped us. His hair was completely white, but he stood tall and his gaze was sharp. It was the hospital's chief of medicine, the dean. He seemed to be coming out to restore order, but as he approached, his eyes fell on my dying mother-in-law, and his face changed dramatically. "Get a gurney out here now," he yelled to a nearby nurse, while rushing to check on her himself. Megan was still at his side, muttering that it was all an act and he should just ignore us. The dean spun around and unleashed a torrent of fury on her. "Are you blind? Can't you see how pale this woman is? Megan, from neurology, is that right? If we lose this patient, you can expect a prison sentence." Before a gurney could even arrive, the dean ordered Megan to carry my mother-in-law into the hospital herself. I followed behind them, thinking to myself that the old woman was incredibly lucky to have a savior appear out of thin air. The same red light above the operating room door lit up. This time, however, Chloe wasn't coming back. The dean himself was leading the surgery. After several hours, my mother-in-law's life was saved. The moment he walked out of the OR, the dean ripped off his bloody gloves and threw them in Megan's face. "What kind of doctor are you? A patient was dying right in front of you, and you did nothing." Megan stood with her head bowed, pretending to take the criticism, but her eyes darted around, looking for an escape. Her gaze met mine. I lowered my eyelids slightly, giving her a look that said, "I'm enjoying the show," a look only she would understand. Megan's entire body tensed with rage. A small smile played on my lips. It was the spark that lit the fuse. She pointed a trembling finger at me and shrieked, "You bastard! You must be so proud of yourself." I feigned shock, stumbling back a step, my face draining of color. The dean was incandescent. "Megan, you have zero respect for patients or their families. You have no professional ethics. This hospital has no place for scum like you. Take off that coat now and get out of my hospital." The words finally seemed to penetrate Megan's panic. This man, the dean, held her entire future in his hands. Megan had come from nothing. The only reason she was so devoted to Chloe was because Chloe had dangled the promise of a promotion in front of her. That promotion was her ticket to finally holding her head high in front of her family back home, her ex-boyfriend, and everyone else who had ever looked down on her. Blinded by Chloe's meager favors, she had forgotten who truly held the power. The realization hit her, and she began to tremble, selling Chloe out without a second thought. Dean Peterson, listen to me, it was Chloe. She told me to stop him no matter what. She's the one who told me his mother-in-law was faking it. It's not my fault. The dean's expression grew even darker. He didn't listen to another word of her excuses, simply motioning for security to drag her away. He then turned to me, his face filled with remorse, and apologized. I put on my best pained and wronged expression. Don't you worry, he said, patting my shoulder. I'll make sure you get justice for what happened today. Right in front of me, he called Chloe and ordered her to return to the hospital immediately. It was quite a while before she finally sauntered in, holding Leo's hand. When she saw me sitting alone outside the recovery room, her face darkened. Leo whispered soothingly beside her, "Don't be upset. Maybe something really did happen to your mom." Chloe scoffed at me, then turned back to Leo, her expression instantly softening. My mother's strong enough to haul a 50-pound bag of dog food. There's no way she'd suddenly have a stroke. I slowly narrow my eyes. Seeing Chloe again, my hands clenched in a fist, my nails digging into my palms. The dean must have heard their voices, because he stepped out of the room. I turned my head just so, allowing him to see the single tear tracing a path down my cheek. To an outsider, it looked like Chloe was berating me, the powerful doctor towering over her wronged husband. As I expected, the dean completely ignored Chloe's greeting and lit into her. Abandoning your post during work hours. Do you think hospital regulations are a joke? His eyes fell on their intertwined hands. What do you think this is, a movie set? You think you're a celebrity shooting some rom-com? Ignoring your husband, ignoring your dying mother, to chase after your lover. You're the living embodiment of a wolf in sheep's clothing. His words grew harsher with every sentence. Chloe, normally so proud, could only stand there and take it, no matter how much she seethed inside. In a spot where the dean couldn't see, she shot me a look laced with poison. I didn't look away. For a brief moment, a flash of that short-lived happiness from my previous life surfaced in my mind, and my chest ached. But the feeling was quickly consumed by a tidal wave of hatred. After a long tirade, the dean's face was grim. The patient made it through surgery, but because of the delay, the cerebral hemorrhage was severe. She's partially paralyzed. The color drained from Chloe's face. Her hand began to tremble. That's impossible, Dean. My mom was perfectly fine. How could she have a stroke? Leo, still smarting from the scolding, added snidely, Yeah, Dean, you can't just take his side. You can't just make things up. What about those professional ethics you were just talking about? The dean looked at them as if they were the two stupidest people on earth. His face hardened, and he grabbed Chloe by the arm, dragging her into the hospital room. Look, you look right here and tell me who this is lying in this bed. When your mother's life was on the line, where were you? Out on the town with this posturing, pretty boy. If it weren't for your husband, your mother would be dead. I didn't follow them in. I just listened from the hallway as the dean tore them to shreds. When I finally heard Chloe's anguished cry, the sound of her weeping over her mother's bed, a small piece of the crushing weight on my chest finally lifted. Suddenly, I heard frantic footsteps. I had just turned my head when a hand slapped hard across my face. Chloe, her earlier composure gone, was red-faced and furious, her eyes wild. You bastard. It's all your fault. You didn't get her here in time. That's why she's like this. You're so evil. Why isn't it you suffering in that bed? The commotion drew stares from passersby. I cowered, covering my cheek, my eyes filled with manufactured grief. I tried, but you told Megan to stop me from coming in, remember? I told you both she was sick, but you wouldn't believe me. You wouldn't let her be treated. There was nothing I could do. As I spoke, real tears started to fall, cementing my role as the victim. Chloe was momentarily speechless, but she quickly tried to shift the blame back to me. My mom just had a physical last month. Everything was normal. You must have done something. You must have provoked her. The dean had seen enough. He cut in sharply. Is a stroke something you get from being provoked? You're a doctor. You do nothing to help your mother with preventative care, and now all you can do is blame others? Are you even human? Seeing Chloe's jaw set stubbornly, refusing to admit fault, the dean wasted no more time. He brought down the hammer. You and Megan are finished here. This hospital is too small for two talents with no ethics. You're both fired. His decision was final. Chloe stood there, powerless to argue. Leo, seeing his chance, put a comforting arm around her and said with a sneer, "It's okay. You're brilliant. Someone else will snap you up. We don't need this dump anyway." The dean rolled his eyes and came over to console me. I continued my act of the grieving husband, while silently cursing the two of them, a match made in hell. In the days that followed, I diligently cared for my comatose mother-in-law. Chloe came to visit daily, but never stayed long, spending most of her time cooing over Leo in the hallway. The other patients in the shared room were incredibly sympathetic to me. On several occasions, they told me right in front of my mother-in-law that a woman like Chloe wasn't worth it. After 2 weeks, my mother-in-law finally woke up. The moment she saw me, tears streamed down her face, her eyes filled with a complex, heavy emotion. Seeing her like this, I knew that the poison I'd been whispering in her ear for the past 2 weeks had worked. She cried and told me how much I must have suffered. I told her it was okay, but the hatred in my heart hadn't diminished one bit. One afternoon, as I was feeding her, Chloe and Leo made their grand entrance. Seeing her mother sitting up and conscious, Chloe's eyes immediately reddened. She rushed over, pouring out her worries from the past weeks. Leo sidled up next to her, pointedly shouldering me out of the way. He composed his face into an expression of concern, but before he could utter a single word, he received a face full of spit. The culprit was my mother-in-law. Leo, fuming but unable to retaliate, just stood there with his eyes bugging out. Chloe immediately wrapped him in a protective embrace. My mother-in-law glared at them, then turned to her daughter, who was about to defend Leo. "Today, I'm putting my foot down. Ethan is your only husband. If you don't accept that, then don't call me your mother." Chloe froze. Leo's head snapped up in disbelief. I smirked from the sidelines. In my last life, my mother-in-law had repeatedly told me what a shame it was that Leo wasn't her son-in-law. Even after Chloe and I were legally married, she would help Chloe cover up her secret meetings with him. The worst was one Thanksgiving when I was away on a business trip. She invited Leo to the family dinner and posted a picture of their happy, harmonious group on Facebook. It was only after I saved her life that she became less blatant about her favoritism. But even then, if someone mentioned Leo's name, a wistful, regretful look would cross her face. But in this life, during the 2 weeks she was in a coma, I had systematically brainwashed her. I repeatedly told her it was Chloe's obstruction that had led to her paralysis and coma. I told her Chloe was too busy with Leo to find time to care for her dying mother. That was what caused this complete reversal, making her despise the man she had once championed. Faced with his mother-in-law's dagger-like stare, Leo looked utterly crushed. "Ma'am." "Tui." She spit at him again, her disgust palpable. Not only was Leo stunned, but even I had to marvel at my mother-in-law's selfishness. She was absolutely ruthless to anyone who threatened her own interests. The repeated humiliation was too much for Leo. Tears began to stream down his face. Chloe, her heart aching for him, held him close and shot a reproachful look at her mother. "Mom, are you confused? Do you know who you're talking to?" "Bullshit. I know exactly who that parasite is. Do you even remember that your mother almost died?" Chloe looked guilty and tried to come up with an excuse, but my mother-in-law had just been to death's door and back. She wasn't about to let Leo off the hook. A stream of profanity flowed from her mouth, making Leo's face alternate between pale and flushed as he stood there trembling with rage. Chloe, desperate, tried to redirect the fire. "Mom, you're blaming the wrong person. It was Ethan who didn't take good care of you. Get out," she roared. "If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have woken up at all. Let's not even talk about how you stopped Ethan from bringing me to the hospital for that bastard. What about these past 2 weeks? How many times have you been here when he hasn't dragged you away early? I'm your mother. I just survived, and all you can do is run around with that piece of trash." No matter what excuses Chloe tried to make, my mother-in-law was firmly on my side, her cannons aimed squarely at Leo. He couldn't take it anymore. Crying, he turned to leave, but Chloe grabbed his arm. She held him tightly, turning her head to whisper words of love in his ear as if they were the only 2 people in the room. The room fell silent. Their nauseating display of affection made everyone else frown. I felt my stomach churn, and I had to suppress a gag. Thankfully, the door opened at that moment, breaking the bizarre atmosphere. A blonde, blue-eyed woman peeked her head in. Her eyes lit up when she saw Leo, and she called out in heavily accented English, "Leo, darling." Leo went pale, his wounded act completely forgotten. As Chloe stared in confusion, the woman sauntered over and planted a kiss on Leo's lips. Chloe exploded. She lunged, aiming a slap at the woman's face. But the newcomer was clearly in shape. She dodged gracefully and countered with a swift blow of her own. Chloe went down hard, red welts already forming on her cheek as tears welled in her eyes. In a corner no one was watching, a smile spread across my face. Showtime. This woman, Isabel, was Leo's girlfriend. In my past life, my spirit had lingered, and I had seen her meeting secretly with him. The moment I woke up in this life, I created a fake social media account and contacted her, pretending to be Leo. Their breakup hadn't been clean. He had played the sensitive puppy dog to get her to spend a lot of money on him, and she wasn't ready to let go. But Leo was slick. With a few sweet lies, he had fled back to the States and blocked her number. I had to thank him for that. It made it so much easier for me to lure her here. It took Chloe a moment to get her bearings. Leo was trying to pull his hand away, refusing to leave with her. Seeing her beloved being harassed, Chloe, fueled by adrenaline, charged headfirst at Isabel, who simply sidestepped. Chloe charged again. Isabel dodged again. After several repetitions, Isabel was toying with her like a fool, leaving Chloe panting and humiliated. She threatened to call the police. Isabel just laughed. "Leo is my boyfriend. I'm taking him with me. What crime is that?" Chloe didn't believe her. Ignoring Leo's protests, Isabel pulled out her phone and displayed the evidence. The text history was filled with flirtatious language, but the explicit photos and videos were the real bombshells. In that instant, Chloe's perfect, idealized vision of Leo shattered. He was vulgar, dirty, and more promiscuous than anyone she'd ever known. Muffled, suggestive sounds started playing from the phone's speaker. You didn't need to see the screen to know what was happening. The other patients in the room looked back and forth between them with disgust. My mother-in-law clutched her chest, gasping for breath as the monitor beside her bed began to blare a shrill, piercing alarm. Chloe didn't seem to hear it. The blood drained from her face, leaving it a deathly white. Isabel sneered and put her phone away. That was the final trigger. Chloe flew at her, and when her slaps failed, she started biting. For a moment, Isabel was taken aback by the feral attack, but the toned muscles on her arms were proof that she was no pushover. She was more than a match for a doctor with no fighting skills. Seeing her daughter getting beaten, my mother-in-law started screaming, her eyes bulging as if she wanted to leap from the bed and join the fray. But she couldn't. She was paralyzed from the waist down. The one-sided fight didn't last long. Isabel had Chloe pinned to the floor in seconds. She pressed her foot onto Chloe's head and asked if she'd had enough. Chloe just stared, her eyes fixed on Leo, who hadn't lifted a finger to help. Finally bored, Isabel spat on Chloe, grabbed Leo by the arm and walked out. The room was quiet again, save for the relentless, piercing alarm. I stood to the side, watching Chloe's vacant expression as she reached a trembling hand toward her mother on the bed. Because my mother-in-law had gone silent. She was lying perfectly still, her eyes wide open. The line on her heart monitor was flat. The whole soap opera had been so dramatic, it felt like an eternity had passed. In reality, in the span of a single evening, Chloe had lost both her lover and her mother. When she finally came to her senses, she was like a hollowed-out shell. I pushed open her door. At the sound, she looked up. The moment she saw me, it was like she'd found a lifeline. She rasped, "Ethan, thank God you're here." How fragile she looked, how pitiful. But I wasn't her angel of salvation. I was the Reaper, waiting to ferry her away. I smiled and walked slowly toward her. With every step, the light in her eyes grew brighter. I stopped at her bedside. She weakly raised a hand to take mine. I gently brushed it away, then, with lightning speed, I slapped her hard across the face. That wasn't enough. I hit her again. Chloe was completely stunned. In that moment, I finally dropped the act. My loving facade dissolved, replaced by a delighted smile. "Chloe, losing the two people you love most. It hurts, doesn't it? Does it feel like a dull knife, sawing away at your heart, bit by bit?" I took another step, blocking the light from the window, casting a shadow over her. I patted her cheek. "It's not enough," I whispered. "Not nearly enough. Your punishment is just beginning." A tremor went through her. Her eyes were filled with confusion. She couldn't understand. For the past 2 weeks, I had been the loving, devoted husband. How could I have changed so completely overnight? Overwhelmed by one shock after another, she chose denial. She avoided my gaze, muttering that she didn't believe it, then closed her eyes like a child, insisting it had to be a dream. I snorted and turned to leave. Suddenly, her eyes flew open. She grabbed my hand, her grip like iron. She was pulling so hard that the 4-needle in her arm bent, blood welling up around it. Her eyes were crazed. "You can't leave. You can't possibly not love me. You're bound to me for life." Just as I was about to break free, Megan burst into the room. She threw a stack of printed screenshots onto Chloe's bed. Ignoring Chloe's weakened state, she grabbed her by the collar, her voice a low, furious snarl. "You played me, Chloe. You played me for a fool this whole time." Then she started hitting her. I quietly stepped back and watched Megan's rampage. All the gratitude Megan once felt for Chloe had curdled into an equal measure of hate. I had sent her an anonymous letter. Inside was the truth about her promotion. The dean had originally intended to promote Megan, but Chloe had sabotaged her, causing her to make a mistake that almost got her fired. Chloe had hidden it well all these years, letting Megan feel indebted to her. Unfortunately for her, she had run into me, the variable she hadn't accounted for. Losing her family would make Chloe miserable for a while, but losing her career? That would be the end of her world. And turning Megan against her was the first step in dismantling it. By the time security managed to pull Megan off, Chloe was a wreck. Her face was covered in scratches, and her pillow was stained with blood. "You better not leave this hospital, Chloe," Megan screamed as they dragged her away. "I'll get you every time I see you. I'll make the rest of your life a living hell." Chloe coughed, her swollen eyes looking at me, trying to form words, seeking comfort. "E.F." I stepped aside to let the doctors through, and from the doorway, I met her pleading gaze. Then I smiled, waved, and left. I went back to the house Chloe and I had shared. Looking around at the warm, cozy home I had so carefully created, I felt a wave of emotion. Every table, every picture on the wall had been a symbol of my hope for our life together. Megan always called me the homewrecker, but the truth was Leo was the one who had interfered. Chloe and I had been together since college. We had planned to get married right after graduation. It was Leo's appearance that created the first crack in our relationship. If it hadn't been for a promise I made to her dying father, I would have walked away long ago. I was the real victim, yet in my last life, I was the one who met a tragic end. Thank God, I was given a second chance to settle the score. I didn't linger on the memories. I gathered the evidence I had been compiling and anonymously sent it all to a dozen online gossip sites. Then I went to the bedroom to pack my things. Just as I was closing my suitcase, Chloe stumbled through the front door. She had checked herself out of the hospital. Seeing the empty closet, she finally understood that the man who had silently devoted himself to her was truly leaving. She fell to her knees, clutching at my pants, tears and snot streaming down her face as she begged me not to go. "Ethan, it was always Leo seducing me. I never wanted it. I see that now. I realize now that you're the one I love. Didn't you swear you'd stay with me forever? You can't go back on your word. That's a promise you can't break. I have nothing left now. Please, I'm begging you, don't leave me." Her shameless words, combined with her bruised and swollen face, were truly disgusting. She only came crawling back when she had no one else. Now that she was a pariah, she suddenly remembered the man who had given her everything. I regretted ever loving her. I kicked her away impatiently and grabbed my suitcase. She scrambled after me, not giving up. I thought I was in for another struggle, but as I walked out of the bedroom, I saw Megan standing in the living room, her expression murderous. I stepped aside to give her a clear path. At the same moment, Chloe saw her. Her pupils dilated in terror. She tried to crawl back into the bedroom to slam the door, but Megan was too fast. She grabbed Chloe's leg and dragged her back out into the open. I calmly wheeled my suitcase toward the front door as Chloe's screams of pain echoed behind me. That night, I checked into a hotel and waited for the next storm to break. When I woke up, the story was the top trending topic online. Doctor abandons post for lover, blocks husband from saving dying mother, gets beaten by lover's other girlfriend. Many of the onlookers from that day, including the other patients from the room, came forward to share their stories. The internet erupted with outrage against Chloe and Megan, which soon spiraled into a nationwide debate about the ethics of the entire medical profession. To avoid being dragged down by the scandal, the hospital publicly released their termination letters. Other hospitals quickly commented, stating they would never hire either of them. The National Medical Board revoked their licenses. Chloe and Megan were blacklisted. Their careers finished forever. As soon as the news broke, my community Facebook groups, college alumni chats, even local buy and sell pages exploded. People called Chloe a monster. A few even formed a vigilante squad to track her down and publicly shame her. Lying in my hotel bed, I thought about Chloe and Megan, trapped in that house together. I thought about how furious Megan must have been when she saw the news. I thought about how neither of them could now show their faces in public without being recognized and reviled. A smile spread across my face. The bitterness I had held inside for so long was finally being released. I felt lighter than I had in years. I spent several days in the hotel doing nothing, just letting my mind go blank before I started to plan my future. My peace was shattered a few days later by a call from the police. It was my first time in a police station, my first time in a detention center. I followed the officer's steady back, the word from the phone call echoing in my mind. Your wife, Chloe Vance, has been charged with 2 counts of homicide. The victims are Megan Shaw and Leo Carter. The court has sentenced her to death, with no possibility of appeal. Before the execution, she has requested one final meeting with you. Are you willing to come? The information was so dense, I couldn't process it at first. I looked at a calendar. It had only been a few days. How had Chloe become a death row inmate? The officer filled in the details. The night I left, Chloe had waited for Megan to fall asleep, then killed her and dismembered the body. The next day, after disposing of the remains, she had intended to find me in my office, but she was immediately recognized and mobbed by a crowd. She ran, ending up in Leo's neighborhood. She called him for help, but he hung up and blocked her number. She tried to sneak into his gated community, but was swarmed the second she showed her face. Defeated, she hid in a dumpster enclosure, waiting for him to emerge. After a full day of hiding, she saw him. He was pulling a suitcase, holding Isabel's hand, a look of pure adoration on his face. She knew he was leaving the country with his girlfriend to start a new life. The days of terror and desperation finally erupted into a firestorm of rage. She charged at him with a knife. As she stabbed him, she screamed, "You bastard! You player! It's because of you my life is ruined. If I can't be happy, you're not getting away to live your dream." The police said her hatred for Leo seemed bottomless. After killing him, she had disfigured his face, cutting off his lips and gouging out his eyes. The attack was so brutal that several onlookers had fainted at the scene. The heavy prison door clanked open. Chloe, shackled at the hands and feet, walked slowly toward the visitation glass. The moment she saw me, silent tears began to fall. She picked up the phone on her side, her voice choked with emotion. In this life, I was wrong. I shouldn't have let Leo blind me. Pushing you away was the biggest regret of my life. I'm so grateful you saved my mother, and that you took care of her so well for those 2 weeks. You were a good husband, and I was a terrible wife. If I had another chance, I promise I would cherish you. Ethan, I love you. Please, promise me you'll wait for me in the next life. Give me a chance to atone, okay? Atone? More like ease her own conscience before she died. I leaned into the receiver, my voice low enough that only she could hear, and I told her everything. How I had deliberately delayed her mother's treatment. How I had made sure her mother died in torment. How I had exposed her to Megan. How I had orchestrated the entire media firestorm. I watched the emotions flicker across her face, from confusion to shock, to pure, unadulterated hatred. She lunged at the glass like a rabid dog, her eyes burning into mine as if she wanted to tear me to pieces. I chuckled softly. The only shame in this whole plan is that you decided to die so soon. You didn't give the public enough time to really drown you in their disgust. Death is easy. Living with that kind of humiliation is hard. So in a way, you're getting off easy. So, I'll wish for you the same thing I wished for your mother. To die with your eyes wide open. On the other side of the glass, Chloe started screaming. I calmly hung up the phone, stood, and walked away without looking back. That was the last time I ever saw her. Afterward, I inherited the Vance family's entire estate. My life from that point on was easy. I never had to worry about money again. I was finally free to pursue everything I had ever loved.